This was a story that captured the attention of people everywhere. Britain's Princess Diana had been in a car crash. She had suffered a serious injury to her head, yet she remained conscious in the vehicle. "Mommy's on the phone." Those words came out the way any 12-year-old might say them, casual, distracted, his mind already moving to what came next. His brother was waiting for him. They had plans to play. The conversation had lasted long enough, and on the other end was a mother calling all the way from Paris. He was eager to go outside and play with his brother, so he ended the call. He had no way of knowing this would be the last time. That single moment, that very ordinary and innocent choice, would become something he carried with him for 30 years to come. Not in front of cameras, not during public events, not in the formal mourning that the world witnessed. On a gray morning in September 1997, when two boys followed their mother's coffin, while billions of people watched in silence. Instead, he carried it privately, quietly, in the parts of his life that remained hidden. The world knows the story about the princess, the tunnel where the car crashed, the photographers following her, the flowers left at the palace, the funeral service, the cameras focusing on two children who were not permitted to grieve as children do. But what most people do not understand is this: the boy who walked behind that coffin never shed a tear. Not because he was stronger than others, not because he was royal. His emotions simply shut down completely, as if a switch had been flipped in his mind, like a house going completely dark when the lights are turned off, and those lights would not come back on for nearly 3 decades. 28 years of thinking about a phone call he could not finish. 28 years of jumping at the sound of a camera flash in darkness. 28 years asking a question he could never fully get out. What would she have thought of the person I turned out to be? And then, slowly, through therapy sessions he almost did not go to, through a relationship with a woman who posed a question nobody else thought to ask, through a choice that shocked his family but set him free, he began to find answers. This is not really about Princess Diana. She is the wound. This story belongs to the boy who heard a flash, and for 3 decades afterward, that sound would take him right back to that moment. If Princess Diana's belief in love changed how you see royal families, please give this a like as a tribute to the mother in Paris who made that call and the boy who did not realize he was saying goodbye. What you are about to hear is something very few people know. She was not the type of mother the royal family was prepared for. Royal families in Windsor did not operate with warmth and affection. They functioned as partnerships between large institutions, bound by tradition and kept at arm's length. The woman who became Princess of Wales at 20 years old did not follow those old rules. Diana Spencer walked into Buckingham Palace as a quiet, relatively unknown woman who had worked helping young children at school from a respected family, but without the shield necessary to survive what was about to happen. She turned 19 when Charles asked her to marry him, 20 when the news was shared with the world, 20 when she appeared before billions of television viewers and became something she had never been trained to be. She had no preparation for what she would face: the loneliness, the press capturing her every action, a relationship that, by her own admission, in tapes that were later made public, was nothing like what people saw on the palace balcony. But for 2 young boys growing up inside that world, all of the public display did not matter. For William and Harry, she was something the world's photographers never really saw. To William and me, she was just the most wonderful mother. Harry would later recall how she would hold them and squeeze them as hard as she could.
But for 2
and there was
boys
nowhere
growing up
to.
inside that
No escape.
institution,
He said this as though it was something wonderful. She snuck the boys into theme parks wearing disguises. She held their hands in public even when royal mothers did not do such things. She discussed the wider world with them, people who were sick, people who had nothing, people who felt alone. And she genuinely cared. She was putting something inside them, a way of thinking, a set of values that came from her heart. At the same time, she was fighting hard to save herself. Her marriage to Charles came apart first slowly, then suddenly. The media became harsh and aggressive. The photographers, the same people who had been following her since she was 19, became more intense. They would chase her car. They waited outside her home. For them, getting close to her was like finding something valuable, and she was the treasure they wanted to capture. On August 30th, 1997, Diana was spending time in Paris. She reached out to her boys, who were at Balmoral in Scotland, where the royal family keeps a home. Harry was 12 years old. William had just turned 15. When the phone rang, Harry picked it up. The call was not very long shorter than it perhaps should have been. He was only 12, William was with him, they wanted to play, and Harry felt the conversation had gone on for long enough. Mommy's on the phone. He wanted to get back to playing outside, so he said goodbye. Hours later, inside the Pont de Alma tunnel, a vehicle moving at high speed while being pursued by photographers hit a concrete barrier. Diana lost her life in a Paris hospital early on August 31st. The following morning, Charles went to see Harry. His son was 12, and when his father came into the room, the question he asked would stay with Harry through every therapy session, every interview, every moment he would later open up to the world, the question of a child who already knew the answer but needed someone to confirm it was real. Did Mommy actually die? Charles said yes. And right then, something closed off deep inside Harry. It would stay closed for a very long time. Harry has shared this story several times in his life. When he tells it, the words are almost exactly the same each time, not because he practiced them, because some moments do not change. They remain exactly as they were, locked in place by the exact moment they occurred. He was 12 years old. William was there with him. The phone rang, and their mother was calling from Paris. It was a normal conversation, the way mothers and sons talk normally. A quick conversation, casual talk, the everyday feeling of a life being shared from a distance. Then Harry wanted to play games. I have to live with knowing I was the 12-year-old who wanted to hang up so he could go play and run around instead of talking to his mother. These words came from him as an adult, a grown man, someone who is now a father himself. The weight in his voice is not guilt. It is something much more difficult. It is the weight of being innocent. He had done nothing wrong. He was only 12. Any child that age anywhere in the world would have done exactly what he did. That is what makes it so hard to let go. The next morning arrived, and Charles entered the room where Harry was. He asked him the question, "Is it true that Mommy's dead?" Yes. Elton John knew Diana, performed at her memorial service, and later watched those two boys walk behind her coffin. He said afterward, "I thought that was the most difficult thing I could ever watch, especially for children that young, having to walk publicly and follow your mother's casket." Harry felt the same way. But the coffin was something you could see. It was real to the world. You could look at it and mourn it. But the phone call was not visible. The wounds we cannot see do not follow the schedule that the world uses to grieve. What comes next is not something people discuss very much. The boy did not cry during the funeral. The world saw these two boys follow their mother's coffin on a gray morning in London, and it affected people who had never met her. People cried on the streets. Grown men who had not cried for years sat in front of their televisions unable to speak. Harry did not cry, not because he was stronger than any of them, but because something inside him had already turned off. When the door came down, and I refused to allow myself to feel sad about my mother being gone, that is how he later described it. It was not a deliberate choice, not a moment of royal strength, but an automatic reaction, the way the body protects itself from pain that is too great to handle all at once. And the people around him, the institution itself, did nothing to help him recover from it. The royal family lives by tradition, duty, and controlling how things appear through the centuries. Within that world, grief is a private thing kept inside, shown carefully, never allowed to become something public. Two boys, who had just lost their mother, were told to walk in formation, behind her coffin, in front of 1 billion people, and then keep going. So they kept going for 28 years. Harry did not talk about what happened for the first 28 years of his life. More than 2 decades carrying an injury that was never treated, never allowed to close, never given the basic help it needed to transform into a scar instead of staying open. And the world kept touching that wound. Every camera, every flash, every photographer who appeared when Harry was just trying to live his life as a young man in his 20s. Every single time I heard a camera click, every time I saw a flash, it sent me right back to Paris, back to that tunnel, back to the phone call I ended because I wanted to play. The emotional shutdown was there, but the things that triggered his pain were everywhere. Grief that is never properly handled does not simply go away. It remains. It searches for any small opening, a sound, a bright light, a song playing in a religious service, and it bursts through that opening with everything it has been storing up for years and years. It does not surface gradually. It arrives all at once, with the complete weight of everything that was never permitted to be felt before. Harry spoke about an occasion. Elton John was playing music. When the music began, that set off the entire mechanism that was making me nearly cry. Almost. He stopped himself. He held it back because that is what you learn in 28 years of practice. not healing, but control, not actually recovering, but managing an internal system that was never built to hold this much weight for this long. The coffin, the procession, two boys in dark suits, walking a path that no child should walk publicly while cameras record. Elton John looked on. Both of those young men mean so much to me, because of who their mother was. He watched them bear that weight in front of the entire world. And he understood what it took. Harry understood as well. When he finally did start therapy, and it came quite late, much later than it should have, what the therapist told him was not surprising. It was a reckoning. 2 years of constant upheaval. That was how he described it. 2 years of finally opening the locked compartment inside him that had been sealed since 1997 and processing everything that had built up inside it. The shame, the flash responses, the anger that had no clear source, the grief of a 12-year-old boy that a man in his 30s was only just now able to experience for the first time. 28 years of keeping silent had not protected him. It had simply delayed the day of reckoning. And when that day came, it brought a question he had never heard before. Many people had posed questions to him over the years. About his mother, about the crash, about the photographs, about walking behind the coffin, about whether he loved her, about his feelings toward the photographers, about how he was getting through it. But nobody had asked him this one. Nobody had really asked if I was doing okay. Meghan Markle asked. It sounds straightforward. But for someone who had spent 28 years managing his loss inside an institution that saw emotional honesty as a weakness, it was not straightforward. Someone asking that question sincerely, wanting to hear his true answer, and actually waiting to hear it, was important. It was the first opening in the shutters that had closed so long ago. Harry had observed what the media did to his mother. He grasped the process in a way that came from his body, not from books. It lived in his nervous system from years of jumping at camera sounds in the darkness. When Meghan stepped into public life, he immediately recognized what was happening. The narratives, the way things were being framed, the gradual creation of a story that had nothing to do with her real self. He had seen this pattern before. He understood exactly how it ended. I will not permit them to force me into their game, because that game took my mom's life. The choice to step away from royal responsibilities, the one that made headlines, broke apart relationships, and became one of the most discussed departures from a major institution in current times, was not, according to Harry, an act of defiance. It was an act of safety. Diana never got to choose to leave. She was trapped in a world that watched her, controlled her, and could not keep her from the photographers who chased her into a tunnel in Paris. Harry saw this unfold when he was just 12. He was not going to allow it to happen again. There was simply no alternative. In his own mind, he had already answered one question. What would his mother have wanted? She and Meghan would have been extremely close friends. That provided the answer he required. Not permission from the royal family, not what the newspaper said, not what the public decided that changed every half year based on which story was getting attention. Hers. There comes a point that changes everything. It is not announced in a press release, not made official with documents, not shared in a worldwide televised interview. It occurs in a quiet moment, in a doctor's office, or a peaceful place at home, when you hold something new and incredibly fragile, and you understand for the very first time what your own parents were trying to keep safe when they held you. Harry recounted it using the same language every parent uses when describing their child, with a helplessness that only comes from realizing that words are not sufficient for what you are feeling. As any father or mother would tell you, this tiny human being is absolutely incredible. But, for Harry, that instant held something that had been building for 30 years, because the moment he became a father himself, he saw Diana from the inside. Not as a public figure, not as a sad story, not as the image the world had made before she had even been buried. He saw her as a mother, as a person who had looked at her 2 small children and felt the exact same thing he was feeling now. That specific, all-consuming, frightening love that makes everything else seem less important. And in that moment, he made a decision. He is not a person in a role. He is not a member of a royal line. Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor would not receive a formal title, would not enter that system, would not receive the official role that Harry had been given, and spent his whole life trying to escape. It was not rejecting who he was born as. It was a statement about the type of childhood he wanted for his son. Diana had tried to give her sons something genuine inside a world that was not genuine. secret visits to amusement parks, public gestures of affection, values that had nothing to do with position or status. Harry understood this. He was preserving it. My mother gave me certain values that I am committed to keeping. His son would not have a title, but he would have a father who finally understood what his mother had been trying to teach. That understanding did not come from doctors' visits by themselves. It did not come from his partner by herself. It emerged from a question Harry had been working through with every significant choice since he was 12 years old. There is a picture that was never created. No one captured it. It could not have been. It took place in a quiet moment, in a room no one was watching, in a life Harry has worked hard to keep genuinely private. But it is simple to imagine from the things he has shared. A man in Los Angeles, with his child in his arms, the peaceful feeling you get in a house that is not a castle, in a place that does not have a king, in a world completely unlike the one where he was born. He is not in any formal outfit. He is not acting out sorrow for anyone's camera. He is not part of any formal line. He is simply a father holding his son and thinking of his mother. The boy who answered the phone in 1997 and said, "Mommy's on the phone," wanting to go play games with his brother. That boy did not understand the importance of what he was carrying when he ended the call. He did not know that this one instant would become the basis for every major choice he would make for the next 3 decades. The therapy work he nearly skipped, but he actually started. The partner who asked him a basic question that changed everything and with whom he remained. The family structure that required him to play by its rules, which he left. The formal position his son could have had, which he turned down. Every one of these major decisions connects back to that same spot. Not to a written statement, not to a political belief, not to any of the public statements, the book he wrote, the series he produced, or any of the public moments that took up so much of people's time debating and criticizing. To a boy of 12 who made the choice to go play instead of keeping the call going, and who spent the following 30 years coming to understand that making that choice was not the wrongdoing. The wrongdoing was that no one ever permitted him to openly face what that choice meant. The pattern shows itself here, not with explanation, just with feeling. The wound from the opening appears again, but transformed. The boy who cut short a phone call so he could play has made his entire adult life about not ending things too fast, not walking away from his pain, not allowing his partner to become what Diana became, not handing his son a title that would cost him the things titles have cost others. He is not racing toward the games anymore. He is staying with the conversation. Diana gave him certain values. He said so himself. You can see them if you look carefully. Not in the big, visible moments, not in the choices that made the news and created controversy, but in the small, quiet ones. A father in Los Angeles who told his son that he does not need a crown, because his mother never needed to be what they made her into either. Tell us what you think in the comments below, because people are already asking whether Diana would approve of how Harry has lived his life, and we want to know your opinion. Click like and subscribe to see more real human stories behind what the headlines told you, coming to your screen every week. Before we finish, we would like to hear from you. Not simply a like, not simply a subscription, although both matter more than you might realize for a channel like ours. We need real thoughts in the comments section, because this story is far from finished. Harry is still here. Archie is growing up. Things are still unresolved between him and the rest of his family. The journalists who pursued Diana into that tunnel in Paris still exist today, still writing, still making money.